It's hard to know where to begin with something like this. Start at the beginning. Well, yeah, no shit, that's obvious. But how do you know where the beginning is? Life isn't neat. It isn't broken down into little plots with defined starts and ends. It's one big mess of choices and coincidences that merge and weave together to make what is normally a very boring story. So I'll preface this by giving you what you need to know about me. I'm not smart. Ask anyone who knows me. These days they'll say I'm reliable, responsible, personable, and lots of other ibles and ables that mean nothing. But I've been very stupid at times, made some very dumb mistakes and choices that I still pay for. But I'd say nearly everyone has at some point. So second, I want you to know I'm not a bad guy. To say I'm a good man would be a stretch, I'll agree. But I'm not cruel or unkind or even particularly hateful. I don't even hate my mother, however much she might deserve it. Anyways, here it goes. My roommate is normal. That might not sound bad, almost sounds like a compliment even, but it's terrifying. He's just left, gone to do something. I really couldn't say. But it feels like when you're in the deep end of the pool and come up for air, or when you've been lost in the woods for hours and just found a trail you recognize. It's that kind of relief, and all because this guy is seriously screwing with me. Somehow, no one even notices him. He just blends in, and yet, he's ruining my life. Let me rewind to this particular story's beginning, as all stories probably should, except the super weird or time travel related. It was summer, a month or so ago. I had just been promoted to a full-time job, assistant manager of a Whataburger. I was hoping to finally follow in my big sister's tiny shoes and find a place of my own, moving out of her spare room. I live in a pretty big city, not Austin or Dallas or anything, but big enough rent is pretty crazy if you want your own pad that isn't in a ghetto or between two cracked dens. I found the perfect place, about a 20-minute drive from my Whataburger, not too central but central enough. $770 a month, 2 bedrooms. I could survive. Just. But in the long term, I'd need a roommate. Going halves on that and I'd be able to save, invest, that sort of shit. So I hit up social media, tried to find someone to fill my gap. Didn't take all that long, maybe a week or two screening out the weirdos. My sis helped me vet the guy. His name was Mike, 26, same as me. Worked an entry-level white-collar type office job somewhere in the city. Typical hobbies. Didn't smoke, drink, or do drugs, which was good for me. We decided to meet him. My sis, Jen, came towards the end of my shift. It was nearly 3 in the afternoon, so plenty quiet. And we mostly just chatted while I wiped a few tables and looked busy. Not that the main manager was in. Then he came. I'd said, I finish at 3, so maybe come round then? And I could swear, the moment that the clock struck 3, he came through the doors. We recognized him from the app we'd found him on. I can't remember what exactly it was now. Either way, neither of us found anything odd then, when we first met Mike. He was civil, good posture, fairly well-spoken, with a normal smile set in a normal face. What did you think? I asked Jen. She'd shrugged. Better than a crackhead. Dude seems normal. What did he say he does for fun again? I couldn't remember then, and I sure as hell have no idea now. He only walked out maybe 10 minutes ago, but if you ask me for the specifics, I think I'd struggle. He had one of those faces, like an extra from an old TV show, the kind of guy who's there somewhere in every episode, but you never even notice until someone points them out. He just blends in. He isn't ugly and he isn't handsome. He has no notable scars or marks. And if you put a gun to my head and really force me, I'd guess his hair and eyes were brownish. But I wouldn't want to be in a position where I'd stake my life on it. For the first week or so, he was great. Well, average. He normally cleaned up after himself okay, and wasn't too loud. We didn't really talk, didn't hang out at all. He just didn't seem the type. He had his life, and I had mine. Or so I thought. My job involved some pretty long hours, The head manager of my restaurant is also the franchisee, Mr. Dixon, or Dick as we all call him. He takes what he calls a hands-off approach. That means he's basically never in, and I'm stuck doing almost everything. Some days I work as long as 12 hours. I don't mind though, keeps my mind off things, and the overtime pay is pretty sweet. Most mornings Dick will stick his head, and its many chins, in the door, and say, "Something's come up, I gotta go downtown, you got this, champ?" "Sure," I'll say. Good man, keep this up and you'll go far." And that'll be the last I see of him. Sometimes he might turn up at close, grab a Diet Dr. Pepper, and sit there sucking at it while we shoot the shit and I sort the kitchen. On a Saturday night, he might occasionally take me to some bar, catch a game or something. He always pays too. I don't mind, I kinda like the responsibility. If you've never worked in fast food, it's pretty tiring physically. You're on your feet all day, keeping track of 100 things at once. As a manager, I should probably be doing more, well, managing. But invariably at least one or two of the high school stoners we employ won't show, so I have to jump on the grill. It's fine, makes me tired enough I can just go home and collapse at the end of the day, and don't have to think about anything too hard. If I'm not working on Sunday, I might get out my battered old Honda Civic and visit my sister. She's got a good job, receptionist at a fancy golf club about an hour south of town. We don't talk to our parents much, not anymore. It's always been us against the world. When I was younger, a lot of my friends never really understood how I could be so close to Jen. I heard all sorts of horror stories about siblings fighting constantly, stealing pocket money from each other, spreading each other's secrets all over school, that sort of thing. I never got it. My big sis was always the only person I could rely on. I wish she was here now. Everything changed a couple of days ago. It was a pretty normal Saturday. I left around 7 a.m. and Mike was already up, sat in the living room, eyes fixed on the TV, facing away from me. "I'm heading out," I said as I passed through. "I'll be here," he replied, as always. It was after the lunch rush had been and gone, and I was sitting pretty behind the counter talking with one of our new hires. The moment the clock struck 3, there Mike was. I don't think I even heard the door open. It was a weird feeling. One moment I'm talking with this kid, he's telling me he's saving for a car, and everything feels normal. Then, there was this pressure, this feeling like the entire world is watching me. I cut myself off, felt my hairs on my arms rise, and there was this embarrassment, a gut-wrenching sensation like when your parents have found your weed stash and you know you're about to have all your secrets laid bare. I turned, and there he was. Cargo shorts, white t-shirt, looking for all the world like the most average customer you could have, and he was staring at me hard. So I pushed down that feeling, greeted him as warmly as I could muster, being that he is my roommate, and took his order. He did nothing, and it was the most intense moment of my life. He ordered normally a double meat meal. The kitchen beeped, and employees moved around me, and I was stuck, trapped like a deer in the headlights as my roommate continued to stare at me. A cold sweat ran down my face and arms, and I blurted out the rest of my lines, telling him to wait by the side. But I'm pretty sure I jumbled it all up. The beeps from the kitchen drowned out everything but the blood rushing in my head. He moved over though, never taking his eyes off me. I was shaking as I packed up his box, keeping my head down, looking only into the sauce trays under the counter. I couldn't bring myself to ask which he wanted, so I just threw a few of each in. Dick would kill me if he was there. I was feeling dizzy, lightheaded, borderline nauseous as I handed over the box. I didn't want to look, really didn't, but I couldn't stop myself, and I took a quick glance into his normal face. His eyes burned and scalded my soul. That embarrassment returned 100 times stronger, and those night terrors you have about being naked at school felt like nothing in comparison. It was as if he could see every secret, every part of my being, laid out like a dissected animal. My heart beat so loudly in my ears, even the kitchen beeps fell away, and for a second I felt like I was going to throw up or pass out or something. I'd never felt anything like it, never felt so known, so judged. Just as I could take no more, he thanked me for his meal, and he left. My shirt was stuck to me, even with the AC on full blast. I had to run to the bathroom, and I probably sat there for 10 minutes once I was done, just waiting for the shaking to subside. When I came out, I went over to the kid who'd been at the counter with me. Hey. You good, man? He said, giving me an odd look. Sure, why? He shrugged and made a face. You look kinda rough, dude. You sick? I shook my head, trying to place a reassuring smile on my face that probably came out as a grimace. All good, just a little hot in here, don't you think? The employee made a noise that could have meant anything. Anyways, I started. That guy who came in just now, he seemed kinda off to you? Huh? He looked perplexed. Which guy? I tried to recall anything visually that stuck out about him, but it was like trying to find words to describe the taste of water. That guy just now, cargo shorts, white tee? You were right here with me, man, I said, trying to keep the edge desperation out of my voice. The employee's eyes flicked with recognition. Oh, that guy? Nah, man, he seemed normal. I barely even noticed him. Why? I struggled to find anything to reply with. Dunno, he was almost like too normal, you know? The new hire just looked puzzled. Sure, I guess. I dropped it real quick. It's like I say. My roommate is just normal. It's a weird paradox. He's so normal no one even seems to notice him, but like, that just makes him too normal. It was that effect he had on me. I'd never seen it before. At home, all he really did when he wasn't in his room was maybe watch TV or eat something. Before now, I don't think he ever really looked my way at all. In fact, now that I think about it, he almost blended in with the beige wallpaper and the gray couch. I couldn't say I'd ever even taken notice before. He was like a lamp or an unused chair that happened to pay half the rent. By the end of my shift, around 10 that night, I was still feeling pretty shaken. In fact, I wasn't feeling like going home. He was always in bed around midnight, so when Dick turned up and hit me with that coming to the bar sport, I said sure. I'm sure you know the kind of bar it was. Faux wood paneling on the walls, tacky neon signs, pool tables with ripped up felt, floor always slightly sticky, and Creed blaring on the jukebox. A real dive. The sort of place Dick seemed to like for some reason. Couldn't ever figure out why. He had money, lots of it, but he seemed to like the dreary miasma of rundown bars. Dick was spilling over his stool, gulping at his bud, and I was nursing mine over the bar. So anyways, he goes on, I always wonder how you manage to stay thin. I mean shit, you built like a crackhead. That elicited an ironic smile from me. Just jeans, I guess, man. That got a chuckle out the big man. Well, shit, I don't remember the last time I fit in a pair of jeans. I laughed along with him, but today's encounter was eating at me, and a few beers had done a lot to loosen me up. Hey, look, Dick, I began, struggling to find what to say. I had a real weird customer today. Kinda freaked me out. Dick's glazed expression snapped serious. Was it that damn tweaker who's always on 16th and Dallas? I told that fuck he weren't welcome since his last OD in the shitter. No, it wasn't a tweaker, it was this guy. He was like normal. Too normal, you know? No, can't say I do. I kept pressing, though what answer I wanted I didn't know. He looked normal as hell, but he stared at me. It was super intense, like he could see into my fucking soul. But Dick's eyes were glazing over as he sank what was left of his beer. I remember when the ladies gave me that kind of look. Maybe he had a little crush on you. And he started giggling. I came back to my senses a few hours later, maybe 2 a.m. I was staggering back towards the apartment. I say that, I was still drunk. Just this part I can remember. I assume I'd shared Dick's Uber and was only about a block away from the apartment. The world was spinning. and I was trying to keep upright while shuffling in vaguely the right direction. I don't drink much anymore, not more than 2 beers usually, but today had shaken me, and I'd pounced on that warm feeling that booze gives you, like everything's gonna be fine and damn whatever comes tomorrow. Tomorrow hit me hard as I rounded the corner. 1 minute I was in the reassuring embrace of a drunken stupor, then I was standing stone cold sober looking at the unsuspecting 2-story building that was my home. It was cold, I realized, despite my jacket. Yet the sweat came anyway. There was some sense, something prehistoric, primordial. I knew I was prey, being stalked, watched by the ultimate predator, and I knew there was nothing I could do in the face of such overwhelming power. He was watching me, my roommate. He was standing at the window, had been standing there maybe for hours. I couldn't see him, not from this far, but I felt it with utter certainty. The adrenaline was flowing. I could feel my heart banging in my chest, and I took a step forward, and another. I was drawn in. What the hell else could I do? It was 2 a.m., and that was my home. Slowly, I kept moving forward. Every atom of my being the sole focus of that presence I felt watching me. There was that small, logical voice in my mind. I'm surprised it was still there. Thought it had died off long ago, absent as logic was from nearly all my prior decisions. But still, a part of me said there was nothing to fear. It's just a guy. A normal mortal man with a weird stare. Now, as I said, I've been plenty stupid in the past. I know what it's like to drive yourself into paranoia. Some part of me wondered, as I staggered down the street, if I was just freaking out. If maybe I'd had something other than beer and shots, if I was high, but I knew I wasn't, and I know I was right to be afraid. I didn't look up at the second-floor window when I approached. I didn't want him to know I was scared, but I could feel his gaze beating down on like the summer sun. Could almost feel it singe my flesh. I shuddered, but then I moved around from that side of the building, and his presence left me, towards the worn steel stairs. Ascending them, caged by solid steel that rang underfoot, I felt safer. Next came the door, a plain white door marked with 3B in plain black. I stood there, the automatic light throwing a sulphurous orange glow about me, and in the middle of the door, beneath the plain glossy number, was the peephole. I couldn't tell you how long I stood, poised with the key, looking into the beady little hole. It might have been 2 minutes, might have been 2 hours. In some way it was worse than the certainty of knowing he was watching. Maybe he was on the other side, watching my warped form, or maybe he was already asleep. Standing there, adrenaline leaching from my system, probably still way too drunk, I made the decision, unlocked the door, and entered. The apartment was almost as I'd left it that morning. TV and PS4 were in their place. The fan had been left on. A jumble of wires, chargers, and the router sat on their little end table. Gray couch with miscellaneous stains. Fridge covered in tacky magnets from Jen's trips and old receipts. Everything was normal, except the window. The window was open. The curtains billowed lethargically in the night's breeze. I stepped up to it, and putting my hands on the sill, I could look out and see exactly where I'd rounded the corner and felt his gaze. I could look and see how I would have been spotlighted by the street lamp. I felt my skin crawl, and I turned to look at my roommate's door. It was closed and hopefully locked. The apartment was still. He either wasn't here anymore or else was asleep. The day was starting to catch up with me, and all the tension and adrenaline had been draining since I came in. I felt unsteady as I closed the window, drew the curtains, staggered through to my room, closed and locked the door as gently as I could, pushing the deadbolt home as quietly as I could manage. Then I collapsed on the bed. The next morning I awoke, sticky, reeking, with a miserable pounding in my head, and a mouth that tasted like crap. I'd passed out without turning on my AC, and the hot Texan morning was doing a number on me. I dragged myself from the salt-crusted puddle I'd left. having taken my clothes off some point in the night. A glance at my phone told me it was 11:49 and I had 2% battery left. Shit, I thought. I put the thing on to charge and crawled through to my bathroom. Luckily, both rooms had their own, though I wasn't thinking about my roommate just then. I quickly showered, rinsing away the grime of the stifling night and taking a leak while I was in there. A quick brush of the teeth and I felt somewhat more normal. Clothes on, I closed my hands around my door handle, determined to make some coffee and start my morning, when yesterday hit me. In a flash, the encounter at the Whataburger and him watching me stagger home. In an instant, I felt scared again, scared and angry. What the hell was I so afraid of? In the cold light of day, with an aggressive hangover and things to do, it seemed silly to be terrified of my own damn roommate. I unlocked the door with viciousness and grabbed my keys and wallet. As I stepped out, I was greeted with blaring laughter from the TV. Mike was there, facing away, ostensibly watching an old repeat of The Big Bang Theory. His back was straight, unnaturally so. He sat stiff and immobile, some character quipped, and the laugh track erupted, but my roommate wasn't laughing. He was statue-like. My roommate, unflinching as the laughter went on, sitting still as a taxidermy, not looking back at me. I could barely bring myself to speak. "Hey," I said. "Yes," he said, and for the first time it struck me how flat his voice was. Not even emotionless, but flat, as if someone had taken a recording and screwed with the levels and balancing and left a voice devoid of anything. My mouth moved and no sound came out. Some big punchline went off on the TV and the laugh track howled and shrieked, and my roommate didn't move or make a sound. "Look," I said, "I'm going out for the day." The hollow voice came back. "I'll be here." That was what he always said, and for the first time it registered in my brain, not as a friendly affirmative, but as a threat. I all but ran out the apartment. I was in my shitbox Honda and halfway down the street before I realized that I'd forgotten my phone. I was half tempted to turn around, but decided I wouldn't need it. As I was driving, I realized I was still really pretty drunk, so I stopped for an early lunch at a Burger King. Nothing good, just a double Whopper with cheese. I felt that a big slab of meat and bread like that, plus a crappy coffee, might help me sober up. Whether it helped or not, I don't know. I didn't crash on my way to Jen's place at least. Once I'd arrived, it was hard to knock normally rather than bashing the shit out of the door, but I restrained myself. Now I'm kind of a scrawny guy, tall but thin, built like a crackhead, as Dick said. My sister is quite the opposite, short, a bit chunky, and covered in tattoos. I said, "Hey," trying to not look too insane when she opened the door. "Hey yourself, you could have called." She started. I smiled and shrugged. "Forgot my phone, had a crazy morning." "Right, you coming in? Sue won't be home for a few hours anyway." I nodded and followed her in. It was nice, Jen's apartment. Far nicer now that I'd moved out. White, modern, minimalist, besides for the amp and cables strewn across the floor, with a big kitchen and a huge TV we'd both pitched in for. "How's the spare room coming on?" I asked, trying to seem casual as I poked my head into the room I'd lived in since I was 17. It was bare and empty, all my crappy posters and other crap I'd left long gone. That hurt a little, like my sister had ripped a part of me out of her life. Not that I could blame her. "It's coming, it'll be cool to have an office," she said, coming over to peer in beside me. I nodded. "Yeah, I'm sure." Jen is more the creative type than me. Her and Sue wanted a place to work on her music for ages. It's just a hobby really, but she's always talking about it, and she always needed a special place to work properly. Back in high school, she never did any homework until our dad set up a little study area in a spare room. "So," she said, "what's this visit all about?" I sighed hard, crossing my arms as I threw myself on her couch. I sat for a moment, biting my lip, as I tried to think of something to say. There weren't any secrets between us, except maybe one of mine, but it was hard to frame it. "It's my roommate." "Oh right, what's his name again?" I hesitated. Mike, I think. Jen snorted. You think? Some roommate you are. Don't you talk with the guy? No. No? I looked at her, feeling embarrassment rising once again. I'm scared of him. Immediately her expression sobered. Why? He's not into drugs, is he? No, I started. No, it's not drugs. There's something real off about him. Off how? Jen pressed. Something we should tell the police. I shook my head. There's nothing to tell them. His behavior is just strange as hell. Was he jacking off in the living room? No, I took a breath. Look, I never speak to the guy. Don't even notice him. But the other day, he came into work, and he stared at me. Jen looked unsure. Well, yeah, you live together. Not like that. He's scary, Jen. Terrifying. He came in and stared at me, like he could see into my soul. I watched her face fall at my words. I saw the pity in her eyes, that sudden, hard edge of accusation. Are you on anything? She asked. My sister, my rock, and the one person I could trust. She thought I was having a relapse. It broke my heart. People do stupid things. It started in high school. My girlfriend at the time, she got into it through her older brother's friends. And I wanted her to think I was cool. Stupid shit. I won't go into it here. I've been clean for 5 years now, all thanks to Jen. But her reaction made it all come back. I talked longer. I explained as well as I could. Told her about last night, about this morning. Finally, she was coming around. And he wasn't laughing? He was just sitting there? She asked. Yeah. Well, it was the Big Bang Theory. I don't know anyone who laughs at that. I kept my frustration buried. Yeah, but he was completely emotionless, not moving, not blinking. Okay, I can see why you're freaking out a bit, she said. Thank you, I said sardonically. But what the hell should I do? She leaned back into the couch, looking sidelong at me. I guess I'll have to mediate. What do you mean? I mean, I'll talk to him, figure out if he's got something against you or why he's being so weird, she explained. Okay, Jen, thanks. I'm glad you believe me. It was a weight off my chest, having my sister back on my side. She always was, even when my own parents threw me out. She'd done a lot for me, and here she was coming to my rescue again. It's isolating, going through things alone. Just having a single person to share these things with brought a sense of peace and security I'd been missing for a day. We'd been talking for nearly an hour at this point, and Jen agreed to come back with me, talk to my creepy-ass roommate, and help me sort all this shit out. I was standing, grabbing my keys off the kitchen counter when I looked out the window. What the fuck? It slipped out of me, along with every shred of hope I'd gained since I left that morning. What? Said Jen, peeking round my elbow. He was there, other side of the road, standing, watching. Jen tensed as she saw him. He isn't moving, she said, an edge creeping into her voice. Nope. Okay, wait here. I guess this makes it easier, Jen said as she slunk into her room, coming back out with her purse. Makes what easier? I asked, as she began digging through all the receipts and crap in her bag. Not laughing at shit sitcoms I get, but no one stalks my little brother. She emerged from her bag with a spray bottle. I blinked. What's that? She rolled her eyes at me. Deodorant, dipshit. She only called me that when she was super pissed. What do you think? It's fucking Mace. You're right. This guy's a fucking creep. Following you out here, and now he knows where I live too. She gave me a look as she strode to the door. I'm sorry I ever doubted you, bro, she said. In that instant, a flicker of my old hope returned. At least I could always count on my sister. She stormed out the door in a fury, pepper spray in hand, shoulders set. She might be short, but she could be terrifying in her own way at times. My roommate, however, didn't move. He just stood, rooted to the sidewalk, in front of the apartment block opposite. And he was still staring at me, not noticing 4'11" of protective older sibling marching towards him. She was right on him when he turned. It was slow, she was shouting, bringing up the spray can, when Mike began to speak. He turned and looked at Jen, and her shoulders fell. I couldn't hear them, not from in there. I had no idea what they were saying, but Jen seemed to fall inwards on herself. Together, she and my roommate turned, facing me. Mike kept speaking, and Jen looked down at her feet. He put a hand on her shoulder, almost reassuring. She dropped the can, and my gut dropped with it. I have no idea what happened, what he said, but next thing I knew, Jen was coming back over. Mace picked back up. At the door, she stopped, and I saw the tears on her cheeks. Her voice wobbled. "Get out." I couldn't understand. What? What's wrong with him? Is he gonna leave? Jen pointed the pepper spray in my face. "Get the fuck out, never talk to me again or I'll call the fucking police." My mind raced and I felt sick as she slammed the door on me. With nothing else to do, I looked about the street, but my roommate was gone. I was shaking, probably in shock as I walked by to my car. I was breathing hard. I didn't even know I was driving until I pulled into my parking spot, just as the sun was going down in a big splash of orange. What the hell did he tell Jen? What could he have told her? And why the fuck would Jen believe my weird roommate? I couldn't make sense of any of it. I shut my eyes and pounded on my dashboard, probably making the cracks in it worse, but I didn't care. I tried to tell myself that it was an act, that Jen was doing something to get rid of Mike. I just needed to trust her, but part of me knew. There are mistakes I've made, ones I've only told Jen about, sure, and also one I've never told anyone. If my roommate somehow knew it, if that's what he told Jen, I could see that leading to her reaction, but I couldn't see how he could know or why she'd ever believe him. I looked up at my apartment. He might already be back, probably was, but I needed my phone at least. I figured that I might as well take all my crap, leave town for a few days, until this is sorted. I think I could sort shit out with Dick, not lose my job. Besides, I was gonna have to deal with Mike. I came up. He was here, standing in the kitchen with his back to me. It was like being in a room with a temperamental nuclear bomb. I felt so tense. I don't know if I was trying to sneak, that'd be pathetic. But I kept my breathing shallow and stepped as lightly as I could across to my room. If anything, I think he kept turning, kept his back to me. As soon as my door was locked, I grabbed my gym bag and stuffed it full of every clean piece of clothing I could find. Then went toothpaste, toothbrush, deodorant. Then came a knock on my door. I froze, heart smacking my ribs. Then came his voice, still and terrible. "You want to leave?" It wasn't a question. That wouldn't be a very smart choice. It continued. I wasn't sure what I could have done. No words came to mind. Everything was blank. There was nothing I could do but listen to that still, dispassionate, almost artificial voice. "You should have been honest with Jen years ago." I clenched my fists, my teeth, my whole body tightened against my will. It weighs heavily, so very heavy. I felt hot, flushed, every muscle tensed as I sat and listened. It's important to talk. There was nothing I wanted more than to be somewhere else, anywhere. I almost considered diving through the window. It would be best if you confessed. I shut my eyes, willing my roommate to leave, to give me a chance to get to my car. "Then I will go now. I have some things to see to, but I am very willing to listen when you return." The outer door slammed suddenly. I jumped, almost cried out, as all that tension suddenly bled away. I have no idea what the fuck he was talking about. He's been gone a while now, and I finished packing my stuff. I'm going to leave now, get as far as I can tonight, then I'll give Dick a call, sort out work. Looks like Jen's blocked me on everything. I guess I might have to go talk to my parents. It's been a day, maybe 2. I'm not sure anymore. As soon as I'd finished writing my last bit, I'd grabbed the laptop, thrown all my stuff in the car, and got as far as I could, as fast as I could. Some of y'all have said I shouldn't fear Mike, my weird roommate, but you weren't there, trapped in my bedroom as he made his demands through the door. You didn't see him destroy my closest relationship in a few choice words. He's a monster and he's trying to destroy me. After the events of today, I've decided I'm going to kill him first. I'm staying at some crappy motel about an hour and a half north, right up near the Oklahoma border. I'm still not sure why I went north. My parents have a house about a half hour east, though I promised myself I'd never go back to them, that I'd stay away from this area as long as I lived. But with Jen having cut me off completely, I guess my parents was the only place I had left to go. The conversation with Dick had gone smoothly, or so I'd thought. I called him that first night when I stopped. "Hey, Dick." "Hey there, sport. Better not be calling out sick for tomorrow. It's looking like we might have a no-show." "Look, man, I'm really sorry, but I'm dealing with some heavy personal stuff at the moment, you know?" Dick's voice returned after a distant grumbling. "Well, champ, that ain't exactly being a team player, is it? It's about trust. If I can't trust you..." I cut him off. "Look, Dick." My mind raced, looking for an excuse. "I don't want to do this, but it's my roommate. He's deep into some serious shit, a drug dealer or something. He's tried to kill me. I already called the cops, but I need to lie low for a few days." I paused as I cast my mind about. "You say it's about trust? Well, I trust you, Dick. You can't tell anyone where I am, or that I called you. Just give me a few days and keep quiet, and I'll have all this sorted, I swear, man." Silence for nearly a minute. "Well, goddamn, sport." There was surprise in his voice, but no doubt, at least through the phone. "Look, man, I knew you had a rough past when I hired you." "I know, man, but I'm out of that life. I haven't done anything wrong. This new roommate has brought it all back down on me. All I want is to work hard, be successful, like you, Dick." The lie came with sickening ease. There was a supportive edge to Dick's voice, almost a pride. "You've come a long way. I dare say you're about the best assistant manager I've had. You deal with your thing. I'll keep shit locked down here." I sighed in relief, some shred of pressure finally letting me go. At least I'd have a job to go back to when I sorted out this nightmare. "Thanks, Dick. That really means a lot, man. I won't let you down." "Anytime, son. And thanks for choosing Whataburger." And that was the end of that. By this point, it was nearly 10 at night. Luckily, there was a crummy diner still open, just a few minutes walk down from the motel. The land was flat and barren under the black shroud of the night, interspaced with the sickly amber glow of humming streetlights. Nothing accompanied me on the walk. Cars passed occasionally, heading through onto places brighter and less lonely, no doubt. A wind howled across the scrubland, and approaching the diner, I turned my head out the wind and saw that opposite was a little church. A humble place, just a brick building with a peaked roof and a big white cross on the side, lit by some floor lights. It stuck out to me, though, as I ducked into the empty diner and settled in a booth with peeling red vinyl on the seats, resting my hands on the sticky tabletop. As I ordered, there was nowhere to look but that church, standing by its lonesome on the wrong side of a nowhere highway in an arid and unwelcoming part of the world. I've never believed. Not really. My parents do, of course, but I was always more influenced by Jen. Her aloofness just made the whole concept seem so childish. Who needs stories and belief when you can just be sensible and life will work out? When I was younger, I'll admit I wasn't sensible. I made dumb mistakes to impress a girl, and I lost her anyway. Gained nothing but a few months in rehab and an end to my formal education. We went to church, our family. I've heard the sermons, sat through Exodus and the Psalms. When I was a kid, looking over to my big sis, arms folded and smirk on her face, it was reassuring. It made the good book seem like nothing but a scary story to get little boys and girls to obey their parents and their preachers. Now I wonder, all that stupidity I did, those regrets I have, that's secret. The chicken tenders arrived lukewarm and underseasoned, dry as the arid wastes around the diner. I choked them down with the Diet Coke, as I choked down my fears with cold reason. If there is someone up there judging me, then that's his business. and it's for later. Maybe not much later. I couldn't help but look back across to the church, and there he was, still as the grave, standing at the bottom of the cross, like Longinus himself. My roommate. He was watching me, and it almost made me itch. The Honda was parked at the motel, basically next door, just a few seconds sprint. It might as well have been on the moon. I dropped a few crumpled notes on the table and bolted for the door. If there had been anyone at the counter, they might as well have been invisible, so focused was my vision. His, even across the street, I could feel it. How our gazes were locked. To describe his eyes as unnatural would be an understatement, like describing the fires of damnation as uncomfortably warm. He could see me, and with his seeing of the body came the seeing of the soul. I felt exposed, like a hare in an empty field with eagles above. My legs were carrying me backwards towards the motel, and he was just standing. Gray hoodie and cargo pants, most normal fella you've ever seen, except those piercing eyes. My calves touched something behind me, and I was free, the connection broken. I was in the parking lot of the motel, backed up against the bumper of my trusty, rusty Civic, and right then I felt I would have fallen to my knees and kissed the scuffed spot where its H badge had been stolen. But I was still panicked, hurrying. I instead dove into the driver's seat and slammed it into drive as the 2-liter roared to life. I flicked on the lights, and there he was, at the end of the motel parking lot, just after the speed hump and before the main road. He was looking my way still, eyes fixed on me. I didn't make eye contact. Instead, I focused on his mouth. I couldn't hear it, but I could see it. "Confess," he said, over and over again. He was saying it as I dropped the parking brake. Still, he said it as I shot down the parking lot, barreling towards him. "Confess," he said, as I bounced high off the speed hump, momentarily losing sight of him as my headlights ramped up. And when the front end bounced down at nearly 50 miles per hour, when I should have smashed into him and shattered his bones, he was gone. I nearly understeered into the church as I speed off east out of town, like a man being chased by the devil himself. My parents lived in a big old ranch, and I made the trip in less than 22 minutes. It was dark. There was no one around, and I drove with my lights off, just in case I was being followed. Parking the Civic up beside my dad's F-150 made it look comically small. The whole ranch had that effect. A big 3-story house with a wraparound porch, the old stars and stripes hanging by the Lone Star of Texas, as typical as could be. It wasn't an actual farm, hadn't been since long before my mom and dad bought it and moved in. I had to sit there for a while, engine off, breeze rattling through the night, hands resting on the cracked old dashboard. The lights were on, in the living room, but the curtains were drawn. I was reflecting. Maybe he just dropped down next to the speed hump, or threw himself aside at the last second. There had to be a sensible, non-mystical answer for all this. I was still reflecting when my phone buzzed. 11:54 p.m., an email. From Whataburger Corporate. My heart was doing its rib-beating routine. As I read through the email, I was fired, in short. Panic started to fill me as I flicked through apps, and there, in my texts, I found it. A few messages I'd missed. Under the name Dickhead Boss. 10:22 p.m. Call me, it's urgent. 10:26 p.m. You lied to me, champ. Call me now. Urgent. 10:49 p.m. He's told me everything. I've already called the police. Told them all that crap you told me. 10:49 p.m. You ever show your face around here, you're dead. 10:49 p.m. Thumbs up emote. 10:50 p.m. Didn't mean to send that. That was it. That fucker had taken my apartment, my sister, and now my crappy job. He wouldn't even let me eat bland chicken in peace. I might have gone to my dad's house looking for help, maybe somewhere to stay, to plan. But this was it. Clearly my roommate wouldn't stop until he'd taken everything from me. I was out the car and halfway to the porch when the door opened. there, silhouetted from the light behind like some deific phantom, was my overweight father holding a shotgun. With a pang, I recognized it. An old wood furniture Remington 870. My dad had picked it up for $70 not long before I was born, and I'd shot my first hog with it. "Jen called." His voice growled as I looked up into the light, eyes struggling to adjust. "She said you might come. Also said I shouldn't let you step a damn foot in this house. That I should just call the police and be done with you." He stood still as a rock, shotgun across his chest, not quite as threatening as if he was pointing it at me. Still a very nasty thing to do in front of your own son, though. "Yeah, not surprised. Things have gone to shit a little, Dad." He didn't move. I don't know what she said. I could make excuses. Wouldn't matter. You wouldn't believe me. My dad lowered the shotgun at that, letting it dangle from one hand. "Heck no, I wouldn't." I nodded. "What's she think I've done this time?" "No idea. She was crying, though. I don't like it when you make my daughter cry." I shrugged, remembering which of us had made her cry more. But I let it go. "Me neither. I wish I knew what I did." My old man tensed at that. "Can't remember? You back on the smack?" I shook my head, wounded by the statement. "No, Dad, I haven't touched that shit in years. Not any drugs. Haven't had so much as a beer in a few days." My father finally seemed to settle, to deflate a little, and I saw how old he looked. His beard, which I remembered as a big black bushy thing, had gone to gray, and his eyes were haggard, face lined with 100 little wrinkles. "She said you were sober, told me that much at least. Besides, I can hardly imagine you driving all this way high. What do you want? We don't have any cash, so don't even ask." It hurt a lot. I'd come a long way, a really long way. In the last 5 years, I'd sobered up. I had gotten a job, stuck with it, made it to my counseling, and even moved out of my sister's and her girlfriend's apartment. But my dad still just saw a heroin addict, looking for money for another hit. My breaths came ragged and my cheeks stung, though whether with rage or embarrassment or anger, I had no clue. I was a vortex of pain and rawness just then. It took me a long, lingering while to collect myself, to gather some sense of composure. "I'm going away, Dad, far away." I yanked out my wallet, showed him the wad of cash in here. I'd withdrawn everything, every last dollar from an ATM on the way out of town. It was at once an impressive stack, but also so little. About 9,000. My whole worth, every scrap I'd saved over the years I'd been fixing myself. "I don't need any money, Dad, just wanted to make peace with myself, say goodbye to the house and to Mom. That's all." I almost believed my own lie as I said it. "Gonna make a new life somewhere? Head north? Cross the border, maybe?" There was an edge to Father's voice. "We'll see." He nodded and let me in. Whatever the Bible might say on suicide, clearly he thought I was already damned. The house hadn't changed much. Same polished wood floors and ugly green wallpaper. My mother was sat in her old chair, there in the living room, but I didn't approach. I stood at the bottom of the stairs. "Mind if I go say goodbye to my old room?" I asked. My father is a lot of things, and in a lot of ways, we couldn't be more different. He's a homophobe who kicked out his own daughter, a man who used his voice or his strength to get his way. Thought differing opinions equated to a lack of respect. And of course, he was deeply devout. But in one way, we couldn't be more alike. My dad is a fucking idiot. And being an idiot, he nodded, before settling down in his own chair in the living room, shotgun lying by his feet. On the 3rd story were the 3 bedrooms, mine and Jen's, left and right, opposite each other. I walked past, didn't even spare them a glance. The master bedroom hadn't had a lock in my childhood, and that clearly hadn't changed as I let myself in. The walk-in closet was still on the right, and with barely 4 foot of that for my mom and dad's Sunday best, the rest was dominated by the same massive 6-foot-tall safe. The last time I'd been here, I'd been on the cusp of the biggest mistake of my life. This time, I hoped things would be different. I had come so far. I would never fall back to what I had been. That, I promised myself. The old digital keypad looked as it had 9 years ago when I'd left this house, thinking that would be the last time. As I went to type in the code, I realized what a long shot it was. Surely my dad would have known someone had been through his safe, would have changed the code. 12/19, Jen's birthday. The idiot. The safe clicked, and I swung the door open. There was my dad's other pride and joy. Shotguns for birds, shotguns for hogs, AR-15s, AR-10s, semi-autos and lever actions of nearly every configuration, bolt actions from Winchester, Springfield, CZ, Tikka, Mauser, and Ruger. Some were new, others had served in wars long past. Cartridges were piled high, boxes of everything from 12 gauge to .410, from .22 long to .50 Browning. My father's hoard of ordnance, his shrine to his own saints, John Moses Browning and Samuel Colt. In many ways, I truly believe my father might be the most Texan man ever born. More than 40 long guns, and yet my head looked past them all. On the door there was a rack, and on that rack was my dad's handguns. And among his fancy and historical pistols, between a 1911 my great-grandfather had carried in the war, and a .44 Magnum of dirty hairy fame, my hand was drawn to a single, unassuming Glock. There were other guns just as good, if not better. A couple of H&Ks, a CZ, but either my hand was moving of its own accord, or some part of my mind has a very dark and ironic sense of humor. I took that Glock 20, grabbed its polymer holster, a box of 10mm Speer gold dot ammunition, and a couple of spare mags, and quickly armed myself. Felons are not allowed to own firearms in the state of Texas, but borrowing from family is something of a gray area. The inner waistband holster hid the big gun even on my skinny frame, and my rear pockets and jacket hid the mags and ammo well enough. A quick peek in the mirror, and I looked no more suspicious than I normally am to my father. Back downstairs, I turned and looked at what was left of my family. My father, big and gray and angry, and my mother. She'd always been a small woman, in both stature and character, but now she was practically skeletal. Shrouded in a blanket the color of dirt, her eyes were sunken in her head, those big pale eyes. She looked pathetic. The last thing Jen had said, before she'd been forced out in the middle of the night, was that Mom was a coward for staying, that Dad would suck all the life out of her. Jen was right, like usual, and my mom looked like more of an emaciated addict than I ever had. I wanted to pity her, but this was the woman who'd sat by as her husband had thrown out their children, driven away her side of the family, and shunned his own. She could have left. All that he was never physically violent, not to his family. But no, she'd always been weak. She was in a hell of her own making, and she could walk through the door at any time. I don't hate her. Worse, I feel nothing for her. Goodbye. The words came without feeling, without meaning, and I left. As I was pulling the Civic back onto the road, I glanced in the rearview mirror. My stomach dropped, but I'd half expected it. There was Mike, my good old stalker roommate, standing on the porch, having an animated conversation with my father. I turned out and was picking up speed as the first shots came from behind. My dad, at the edge of his fence, was shooting at me. I was already a quarter-mile gone and picking up speed fast, and whatever bird shot or buckshot he had loaded was coming nowhere near me. Still, it's an unsettling feeling, having your own father shooting at you. I noticed as well, Mike was nowhere to be seen, and he hadn't come in a car or anything. I would have seen it. Whatever the hell he is, he has a date with the gold folks of Speer Ammunition, and I wasn't going to keep him waiting. It wasn't like I had any else either. Everything I'd ever worked for, whoever I'd had to rely on, had all been ripped away by my oh-so-normal roommate. Thinking back, I'm sure it was Jen who picked him in the first place. There had been others who could have been my roommate, lots of them. I remember more about them than Mike anyway. There was a Chinese postgrad student, liked playing League of Legends. Some European guy, must have been 6'7", just kept smiling and talking about how he liked American girls. A half Indonesian, half Jamaican wannabe rapper, he'd seemed fun. And who could forget some guy from Dallas who was convinced his grandfather had been the second gunman on the grassy knoll. All this was rushing through my head as I drove nearly aimlessly. I'd taken a right out of my dad's place. Instead of heading back towards town, I was pressing into the wide expanse of North Texas. At Perryton, I headed south, cutting through the wide desert plains under the light of the moon and the stars. Nothing but me, the road, and my memories. At Pampa, nearly 1 a.m., I stopped at a Taco Bell. It was the only place still open, and they gave me a shitty look as they were closing in about 5 minutes. So I drove on, with my Crunchwrap Supreme congealing in its wrapper, and my Baja Blast growing warm and diluted. East I went, seemingly taking no notice as the world passed me by outside. I couldn't tell you how I was feeling. There was something tranquil about that night. The road stretched on forever, and it felt like I had all the time in the world. And yet, I knew now there would be no escape. Whatever was happening was beyond my ability to control or to understand. Jen gets stressed when that happens. She gets all anxious, starts biting her nails, picking at her hair. I've never really been like that. As I see it, you should only care about things you can control. If it's something bigger than you, war, politics, news, even workplace drama you ain't the center of, why care? Maybe that's what made me so susceptible to drugs back in high school. It was something I could do at that time in your life when you have no control, no autonomy, at school or at home. Drugs are a conscious decision. It's a way of striking back at the man. And then you're in the grips of addiction, and your priorities get fucked. Getting high isn't a choice. It's the most important part of your day. School, hygiene, friends. It all comes in a very distant second behind drugs. And the harder the drugs, the further back those other priorities fall. I stopped somewhere over the border in Oklahoma, some nameless patch of dirt on the roadside. I ate my Crunchwrap and chugged my Baja Blast, and it was the best thing I've ever eaten. I've thought about this, about what's coming. This morning, either I'm going to die or Mike is. It's a good feeling, having something that final to look forward to. Every minute out here under the moon feels like an hour of bliss. If I don't write anything else, know I'm dead and rotting in some nameless ditch somewhere in Oklahoma. A lot's happened. I need to confess. The police are already on their way, so I guess I should start today at its beginning. I slept for a while. The seats in the 03 Civic can recline totally flat, and it's not too uncomfortable unless you haven't showered in a couple days and have a Safariland holster inside your waistband, digging a Glock into your nuts. Still, I must have caught some sleep, because next thing I knew, dawn was streaming in through the windshield. Somewhere in the night, on the 152, I'd passed into Oklahoma. It was strange, but when you cross into another state, it seems like the scenery always changes, don't it? The dusty, arid, endless expanses of Texas had given way to a new greenness, healthy grass and stands and coppices of live oak, all under a beautiful virgin sky. Under the impression I was heading towards my death, I sat for a long while, just taking in that golden majesty that struck the scattered clouds, burnishing them to a silver gleam. I loved that sunrise. It still might be the last I see. Eventually, I knew I had to go on. It was a long drive. I turned north at a nameless crossroad onto the 283. I stopped in Cheyenne for my last breakfast as a free man. A little diner, can't even remember the name. I was stressed. Crossing state lines as a felon, concealed carrying a gun, does that to you. I was tired. The weight of the last few days weighing on my back, heavy as the cross. I had a breakfast burrito and a sweet tea. It was pretty good. considering the state I was in. This part of Oklahoma, the Black Kettle National Grassland, wasn't new to me. I've driven these roads once before. You might wonder why I'm driving away, why I'm not back, when I intend to confront Mike. Well, I think he'll meet me where I'm headed. I think he knows the place. And I know he knows what I've done. North, then east, from Cheyenne. There's a nameless town just there. Go a little past, and an unpaved road cuts north to south. Take it, and head north a few miles. And there it was. The whole grassland is a tangle of brush, thickets of trees, and a few hills breaking sightlines. On a hill not too far left of the road there stands a lone oak, and buried under its twisted branches is a man that was named Peter. Mike was there, as I knew he would be, clad in jeans and a leather jacket, despite the oppressive heat that hit me when I opened the door. His face I cannot describe. It was beyond imagining or comprehension. I approached, as casually as I could, trying to give away nothing through my body language that conveyed the massive violence I was about to inflict. 50 feet. I walked closer. 30 feet. Closer still. 10 feet. I stopped. He said nothing. He stood still. Above a shallow grave I now intended that he would share with Peter. My right foot went back. Hands came up to my side. Left hand whipped up my shirt. Right wrapped around the gun. Both my hands met, center chest, high. A perfect grip. I pushed the gun out, forwards, sights aligned in my right eye. The drawn had taken less than a second. Mike had no time to react, but he didn't try to. The rounds rang out across the prairie. 1, 2, 3. The gun kicked hard. 10 millimeters always kicks harder than you think. Brass leapt from the slide and tumbled to my right. 4, 5, 6, 7. Shooting without ear protection, even out in the open, feels shit. Like getting kicked in both sides of the head at once, rattling your brain. It didn't register at first. I was a good shooter, even if I hadn't done it in nearly a decade. You don't lose the skill, only some polish. Yet at 10 feet even a child would land most of their shots. And Mike still stood before me, unflinching, unchanged. Where the bullets went, I have no idea, but they didn't touch the average-looking man with the burning eyes before me. I stood, just stood, gun still raised, rounds left in the magazine, but I knew it was pointless. My heart had sank as low as it could already, as soon as I saw him from the car. All I felt then was numb, completely drained of all emotion. It's like when you're a kid, trying every trick in the book to get out of school and avoid a test. When you fake being sick, try and start a fight, shout a bunch of swears and slurs, try and run out the classroom, but your teacher brings you back, sits you down at your desk, and you just look at the sheet, knowing that there's no way out, no escape. Like that, but 1,000 times stronger, knowing you've lost. I'd lost a long time ago, before Mike moved in, before I left home, before I buried Antoine, before the first time I'd stolen the exact gun clasped in my hands, before I'd bought the heroin for my girlfriend. I had lost and Mike had won. I slackened my arms, gun hanging uselessly from my hand. I stepped forward into a normal pose, one parallel yet somehow inferior to his. I still couldn't meet his eyes, couldn't feel known, but he must have known me anyway. "Look at me," his voice rang out. It was alien. It was inhuman, that voice. So balanced, so unfeeling, so perfect. There was no way to resist. My eyes pulled themselves up, with no input from me. I looked him in the eye, and he strode forward, over the grave. As he saw me and understood me, so too did I know him. But I could never understand the being before me. He who had led shining armies when the world was young, who had seen endless and timeless evils and vanquished them all. He who weighed souls and bore justice on levels so cosmic and inhuman. He who found my guilt as it weighed down my wretched soul. "Peter waits below for trumpets and voices from above. Is that fair?" he said. I knew it wasn't. I wanted to protest, say that the world is, by nature, unfair. There are plans far larger than any of you. It is not your place to take a life, no matter your reason," he said. I fell to my knees before him. What I had done to Peter, in my head it had just been a twist of fate, an accident. "Are you worthy of forgiveness? Are you responsible enough to admit your failing?" he said. No, I wasn't. All my life I'd refused to make choices. I'd hid behind my sister, behind addiction. I'd never once really taken responsibility for anything. Hell, I'd basically forced Jen to find my apartment for me, and she was the one who'd gotten me hired in the first place. "Screw you," came out of my mouth before I realized I spoke. I was sick of the shame, the guilt. Michael seemed almost to grow, to flex, and to wax brighter despite not moving. "I've cast down greater snakes than you. Just confess, and this can end." I was still locked by his gaze, his ancient and all-seeing eyes. He wanted me to give a confession, an admission of guilt, for me to stop hiding, to take responsibility for once in my wretched, pathetic life. Well, here it is. It was September 24th, 2017. My girlfriend Lily and I were skipping school as usual. I'd stolen about $200 out of my dad's wallet, and we were heading for the haunt of our local dealer. It was our normal routine, if the routine of a heroin addict can ever be called normal. Suffice to say, we got high, shooting up in her bedroom, in her empty house. We both got high, we both passed out. Only I woke up, cold and dead, covered in her own shit and vomit. I left her there. She wasn't found until her parents came home the next day, and whilst the police wanted to talk to me, I wasn't anywhere to be found, because I was in Oklahoma. I'd called my drug dealer late once I'd gotten my brain back together after the heroin and Lily's death. I'd pretended she was still alive, that she wanted more. He laughed down the phone, and I told him to meet me up north of town. Near her place, I'd lied. She lives north of town, and we're way too high to drive into Amarillo. I'd been certain he'd believed me. I'd already been to my father's place, grabbed his Glock 20, and was waiting by my car. At 11:53 p.m., a car, a 13 Camry, pulled up. I didn't hesitate in the darkness, didn't even try and confirm my target. 5 rounds in the chest, 2 in the head. I think it's fair to say, most people haven't seen what 10mm self-defense hollow point rounds do to a human body. The entry wounds look normal, but it blasts chunks out of the exit. It can shatter bones. And if it hits you in the head, everything is coming out the back. So Peter was there, a bloody, malformed mess, leaking into the desert, and not my drug dealer. Just a random passerby, perhaps a concerned middle-aged man, stopping to see if he could help a teen stranded in the desert. I stuffed most of him in a suitcase I'd bought, the big one I'd used when I got kicked out the house. I left his car there, still idling as I took off into the dark with my grim cargo. I sped blindly down the roads, panicking, lights off. I would be surprised I remembered the route, except that white-knuckled drive is seared into my memory. By the time I'd finished burying Peter, it was nearly midday. I cleaned myself up with wet wipes. I used his own cash to get lunch, to get a room at a motel. Then I drove back home and pretended nothing had happened. On the news, I heard of a single father, wife passed away, working 2 jobs to support 2 young daughters, who had disappeared on his way home one night. I heard how his car had been found, evidence at the scene leading the missing persons case to be upgraded to a homicide investigation. I didn't have to pretend to be crushed when Jen told me they'd found Lily. Some part of me must have still been hoping. That day crushed me. After I committed my murder and buried that father of 2 in a shallow grave beneath that oak tree, I spent years getting high. I stole from Jen, probably thousands. I stole from her girlfriends too, from my parents' house as well, and probably from whatever friends I still had. My father hadn't always been a monster. I remember our first hunting trip, how he'd been gruff and quiet, but told me how proud he was when I put that hog down. My mother had never said no to me, always showering me with love. We'd spend Saturdays baking cookies together. It was me that destroyed them. I fell harder and harder, got into bad crowds, did drugs, started getting loud and threatening at home. There's only so long you can worry about a person, try to help them, before you just become numb to it. I'd sucked every ounce of goodwill and love they'd ever had out of them years before they kicked me out, leaving them with souls turned to stone. Jen had to nurse and baby me through all that shit. And all the while, I never did a single thing for anyone, not even myself. It was Jen who made me go to rehab a couple of times. It was Jen who'd arranged and paid for my counseling. It was Jen who'd got me the interview at Whataburger. I am nothing but a parasite, a leech. All my life I have done nothing but take. I've taken all the joy from my parents, taken all the time and love my sister ever had. And I've taken a father from his little girls. Michael heard this. I screamed it at him, not so neat or so thought through. He heard, and he said nothing. He just watched, and I felt small beneath his eternal, immortal sight. So then I took out my phone. The 911 operator I got sounded like an older lady. She had a kind voice, and she listened very patiently to my confession as I filled in the blanks in an 8 or 9-year-old murder case. Then she informed me that the police were on their way, that they would be armed, that I should make no sudden movements, and that they would be with me in about an hour. And Michael was gone. So here I am. After a life of taking, for once I've given. One measly confession from a coward. This was all I had to give, so I figured I'd give it out here too. Thanks to anyone who stuck with the story. Not to get all cliche, but it looks like the real monster was me all along. Typical, ain't it? I can hear the sirens now. I still have the chance to pussy out, or to go out in a blaze of fire. I have a gun, 2.5 mags. Well, keep your eyes on the news tomorrow. I guess you'll find out.